Alright everyone, we have to talk about Beijing, Biden, electors, and all sorts of other funny things, but first, I am shadow banned on YouTube. If you choose to watch me on YouTube, I ask that you share this and other videos when you occasionally get notified of my uploads out on other platforms that are more searchable. Twitter, Facebook, Minds, whatever they happen to be, slap it on a blog somewhere. If not, there will be links in the description and a pinned comment on YouTube with links to 4 video sites that I also work on. Now, I'm on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and Dailymotion, and you can join me on one or all of those. And I do appreciate that, arguably at this point more. I'm soaring on ahead everywhere except for YouTube and Twitter. It's very interesting, now, isn't it? Anyway, Beijing Biden has been officially elected by the Electoral College. That's point number 1. You should prepare at this time. Because that's how the electors voted. Prepare for 4 years of economic stagnation, attacks on the Constitution, and going back to the doldrum-style shitty government that we repudiated basically in the 2016 election. I do not expect Trump to concede, even though Republicans keep harping on him to do so. There's no requirement for him to give an official concession. And technically, and some people are pointing this out, for instance, there's a Parler thread up about this. Technically speaking, yes, there is a legislative methodology by which Pence, if there is no official concession and it is technically a contested election, it is technically possible for the Republicans to screw around and nullify the electoral votes of those 4 contested states that have active cases against them, because there are ongoing pieces of litigation there that are technically not settled if there is an active case. They could, for instance, say, well, we're not going to seat the electors from Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin because it's contested, so we're not accepting them. Keep in mind that if you reduce the electors, you also reduce the 270 total needed to be elected. Trump would not win by a large margin even if all 4 of those states were basically taken off the table. Despite the huge number of votes there, because you'd also be deducting that total from the 270, he'd technically only win in a squeaker election. It certainly wouldn't be a landslide. They could do that. It's legally, in theory, possible. Will that happen? There is a very, very low order of magnitude of chance that that would occur. Mainly because if it were to happen, you'd see 1 million people protesting outside the White House. Half the population would consider the presidency unconstitutional, even though technically it would be a proper legal process. It would be seen as illegitimate, I think, by too many people, and by many Republican lawmakers as well. What would end up happening? Let's say that occurred. Let's say that Trump and Pence managed to nullify those states, get them off the table with the blessing of House Republicans or whatever, or Senate Republicans rather, and they managed to do that. The problem is that Trump would be impeached and removed from office basically right away. He would be removed from office. Pence would subsequently be removed, and then you'd have President Nancy Pelosi, arguably. That would not be good. I think I'd rather deal with the Alzheimer's-addled dude as opposed to the Alzheimer's-addled, even more insufferable individual with Pelosi. It's sort of a stopgap measure, having her as Speaker of the House, third in line of succession. You'd have President Mike Pence for a day, and then you'd have President Nancy Pelosi. It'd be a constitutional crisis of epic proportions. It would also lead probably to Trump being prosecuted thereafter. There are Democrats bitching right now saying Trump needs to be prosecuted after he leaves office. Trust me, that bloviating bullshit is just the same as lock her up. Ain't gonna happen, dude. Trump is gonna spend the subsequent 4 years as a de facto shadow president anyway, constantly railing against the system. He did it before. He openly stated to the world, both in the debates and when he was running in 2016, the reason why he showed up to run in the first place was because the Obama presidency was a disaster. Well, now you've got Obama's VP as the president-elect, the literal president-elect as of now, as opposed to the asterisk president-elect. And now he'll have an asterisk presidency. Beijing Biden's presidency will lack any real credentials for several reasons. Number 1, he's stacking his cabinet and shit with the same war hawks and sleazy corporate crooks that Obama and Bush had around. So you're going back to the swamp in the most literal sense, as undrained as ever. Number 2, half the population doesn't even accept the election results. By the way, it's about the same fucking problem as if Pence and Trump were to pull that off. Half the population doesn't accept the election results because everyone thinks it's fucked up. Half the population, even if that's solved, will think it's fucked up. It's a catch-22. It doesn't even matter which happens. And further, because Biden's got Alzheimer's. He's not technically in charge of anything. If you think for a moment that the powers that be in the Pentagon, in big corporations, in the mass media, the lamestream media, and in political circles, which are all part of a nexus, and Wall Street, Hollywood to an extent, they're part of a nexus that controls things in a very interventionist, corporatized sense for the billionaire class. This is the swamp, the establishment. These are the war pigs and con men of society. If you think for a moment that they're going to allow a near 80-year-old man who has clear cognitive difficulties make any major decisions of his own, you're crazy. It'll be like when Woodrow Wilson had his stroke, and for the last year of his presidency, they think that his wife was the one signing or vetoing legislation because she wouldn't let anyone come into the bedroom to see him directly. That's basically what you'll have. Assuming that he doesn't blow a gasket, have another aneurysm and drop dead, or have to resign because he breaks down into baby talk on stage and shits his pants at the same time, which, trust me, at his age is a real possibility. We've got to keep this in mind. The President of the United States might drop dead in the middle of a speech. He's elderly. He's almost 80 years old. Assuming that does happen, you end up with the first female president being an unelected official who has such low in-party enthusiasm that she'd probably be a lame duck on day one. Just so people are aware, Kamala Harris isn't the main threat, though. She's the Dick Cheney of the administration. She's the one that you have in there to make Biden look good by comparison, because he doesn't look, he looks out to lunch, but he doesn't look evil. He's sort of the befuddled grandpa, and she plays the demonic harpy who jingles her bracelets in human resources and taps her feet and makes snarky comments about you and your co-workers behind your back. It's a goddamn floor show. It's a goddamn farce. It's an asterisk presidency. He's not in charge of anything. He's a steward, a figurehead. Some people think, oh, he's a Trojan horse to get Kamala in there. No, Kamala isn't the big cheese either. Kamala could never get elected. She couldn't act her way out of a paper bag. She's not even likable among Democrats. It's not her, it's the cabal behind them that's the problem. So you should definitely prepare. You should probably buy a firearm and ammunition. And hell, because Biden, supposedly, at least on some days he says he wants to ban assault rifles and on some days not, but because you know that Congress would never grandfather it in, those weapons would be worth 10 times as much. So you might as well get one. You should have food on hand. It's not going to be a dark winter, it'll be a dark 4 years, so I would say better to buy seeds and soil and a little plot of land and learn how to grow things. Then you learn how to can, and how to make jellies and soups and shit. Learn basic survival skills, dude, because it could turn very bad. If Biden imposes some of the things that he's talked about wanting to impose, and you can't necessarily take it seriously, you don't know what he believes in, because he literally plays both sides on every argument. If he were, though, to go to the left on certain issues, it would cause a Dem-pression. You would see a significant economic downturn that would last for 4 years. Now, this is why, at this time, I predict that the midterms are going to go heavily Republican. I predict the next president will definitely be a Republican, especially if it's Trump running. He hasn't ruled it out. If Trump runs, he has a good chance, because he'll be able to look at everything that Biden did that sucked and say, told you so. And there won't be any Dem enthusiasm. They'll probably have a shittier candidate than him. I'm looking at the potential 2024 Dem field. The closest thing to a candidate that they have that they could field would be like a Joe Kennedy. He lost his race against a leftist, so he's no longer particularly viable. They have Beto. They could run him. Tim Kaine. What? Who do they have to the run? Everyone within the Democratic Party is either prohibitively young and inexperienced and shitty, coming out from the far left, which can't win a national platform, or they're elderly, they're geriatric. We're having a national conversation about that in 2016. You notice how the media didn't bring it up as much this time around. I wonder fucking why. Could it be the fact that the Democratic candidate's pushing 80 years old? Anyway, it'd be funny because if Trump did win, he'd be the same age as Biden is now, and then they would switch back to worrying about his age, I'm sure. It'd be really funny. I want Rand Paul. I think Rand Paul should be the next president. I think he can do it too. He's got to temper his attitude a little bit. He can get a little bit fiery. Remember that one time he was walking around doing a live stream, and I guess people were shitting on the live stream, and he's just said fuck it and turned it off? And it was really, really messed up and funny. Yeah. So yeah, you've got Beijing Biden's asterisk presidency beginning on January 20th. Happy birthday to me, by the way. It won't destroy the country, but it'll cause economic issues. It's not going to be a good time. We're about to enter a sort of a melancholic era, sort of like a Victorian thing. You've even got the moralism. Well, look at what's happening with masks right now. That's about all. Peace out.